Hello. Hello and good afternoon to you all. Thanks for joining us today. This event is organized by Products by Women, a diverse global network for women in innovation, tech, and beyond. A great space to connect and learn from peers, find jobs across borders, and get matched with recruiters and mentors to accelerate your career. A few ways to connect with us: by attending our events. You can submit an article to be featured, join our Slack channel, and we also have a podcast I encourage you to attend. I'm Iva Keranova, and I'm your moderator for today. A bit about me: I'm a multidisciplinary designer, currently focused on providing better user experience, and everybody comes from somewhere, and my background is in graphic design. I'm also very passionate about the outdoors. And now I want to introduce you to our speaker, who will share with us today her experience in running design sprint. She is a user-focused product manager currently working at Postlight. She uses lean product development practices to bring value to users at scale. In her previous life, Sarah has worked as a community manager, teacher, and get this, a stand-up comedian. Let's say hello to Sarah. Hey, Sarah.
Hello. Can you see me and or hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
Perfect.
fantastic. All right, so hi. I'm Sarah. Very nice to meet everybody. So tonight we are going to talk about how to run remote design sprints. But first, I'm just going to take a few minutes and talk to you about my professional journey. I understand that a lot of people on this call are either interested in product management, working in product management, or UX design. Maybe you're a student, maybe you're working in an adjacent role like a business analyst or marketing or something like that, and you're looking for ways to break into product. And so I would love to tell you how I ended up as a product manager. And so just to tell you a little bit about my journey. I started off in the social sciences in school. I really didn't know that I wanted to work in technology. I started off with sociology because people and society fascinate me. I went and got a master's in anthropology and tourism studies. Still didn't know what I wanted to do, but was very, wanted to study things that would, show me more about people and about the world. When I finished my master's degree, I got into stand-up comedy, and I was doing that a lot for a few years, gave it a go. And then after that, I transitioned into teaching. Not that stand-up wasn't fun, but there is a lot of traveling, and decided that I wanted to, have a more traditional job. So I was a teacher in a community college for 2 years. And then I had a friend who was working in tech who referred me to, or suggested that I interview at his company. And so I've been working in tech companies for the last 5 years in New York. And it's been, anyway, just, I've done a lot of things, I guess, is the long of the short of it. So the story of the last 5 years in tech, I started off not in product management, but I started off working at Meetup as a community support specialist. So answering emails. Meetup at the time had 25 million members. And so providing support for like a very, very large and passionate community of people. I got a lot of great experience there in a lot of different areas. And that was my first exposure to product management. And also engineering. From there, I went to a 3D printing company called Shapeways. I was recruited to be the team manager of their community team. So I was leading an international team of people in the United States and in the Netherlands, which sat under their marketing department. From Shapeways, I went to Thoughtbot, which is a digital product agency. It was my first exposure to working there. Originally, I started in a marketing role, As I was there, I kind of expanded into taking on more responsibilities. So I started picking up sales calls, and then started helping out with product design sprints and running retrospectives. And before I knew it, I was doing work that was very product relevant. When I decided that I wanted to be a product manager, I joined Stride Consulting, another agency. And then from Stride, I've moved on to Postlight. And so if you are wondering how I made the transition from support through community and marketing into product, I can tell you exactly how it happened for me. It's funny because a lot of people kind of stumble into product. It is sort of adjacent to a number of different roles, and that's kind of how it happened for me. It first happened, I was working in that sort of like marketing and sales role at Thoughtbot, and I was doing things that were relevant to product, but I didn't quite fit together that it was a product manager's role. And a friend of mine said to me, he was like, hey, Sarah, like at a different company, he said, hey, this product management role opened up on my team. I would love for you to apply. And I responded to him, well, what do I know about product management? And he was like, well, don't you work at a product consultancy? and I was like, oh yeah, I do work at a product consultancy. I guess I know a couple of things. And I, like, at the time I was kind of, I was kind of figuring out exactly like what I wanted to do and like where I fit. And I actually didn't fully understand what product management was at that time. But when I started looking into it, I realized that working at many companies, I kind of like had already gained a lot of the core skills that you would look for in a product manager. So my experience in customer support and community, it taught me about user empathy. I had done a lot of cross-functional work. I had learned a lot about engineering process. So I'd already worked alongside and like led teams of developers and designers. I had experience in planning and measuring experiments, working with engineers, working with designers. I had experience reporting bugs, in feature prioritization, running team retrospectives, facilitating design sprints, setting team metrics and goals. It's just kind of funny that it was like all right there in front of me. And until I had that conversation with my friend, it had never even occurred to me that I could be qualified to apply for a product management role. And so I kind of, and so I learned, it kind of like struck me all at once. And I was like, oh my God, I think I can do this. I think I can be a product manager, just by virtue of working in the industry in a number of different roles, and always being interested in being as cross-functional as possible. And so once I realized that I had a lot of good experience, I decided like, okay, I'm going to lean into this. I'm going to go after this, and I'm going to start applying for product roles. That is not the end of the story. I knew that even though I had a lot of good experience, I really still wanted to skill up and make sure that I was as prepared as possible. And so first of all, I should say I'm very, very lucky that I was at a company where I had really supportive management. And so like letting them know, like, this is something that I'm interested in, and I would like to take more of this in with my work. And so I had the support of a senior person in my office who was helping me to get more experience in design sprints, for example, and learn more about product management when they knew that that was an interest. Also a lot of reading and studying. I will give you my book list in a second, but I read everything I possibly could. Networking was absolutely essential. And it was really, really important in my search. So I let my friends know that I was looking for product roles. I got back in touch with product managers that I had worked with in the past, to let them know that I was looking for mentorship and that I was also looking to make the jump. I fostered a relationship with new friends who are in product, who are product managers. And I also just sought out coaching from like engineer friends and people that I knew, like people that anytime that I had an engineering question, I'm like very lucky that I have one or two friends that I can call. And so as I was reading and studying and taking in a lot of new information, I had people I could call on to confirm that information. And lastly, like, it sounds obvious, but it's really not. I am in a product manager role because I applied for product manager roles. And I did not get the first product role that I applied for, but you continue to interview and you understand where your strengths and weaknesses are. And you just, you listen. Like sometimes you're lucky enough to get feedback, right? Like feedback is a gift. And some of the feedback that I got about my areas of experience really helped me sort of skill up and do extra studying in areas where I got feedback that I had weaknesses. So just for the sake of this, I really read a lot of books. And these are the ones that I found the most helpful. I don't know if anyone is interested. I've just put these together in case you want to take a screenshot, but there are a lot of really wonderful books out there that will give years of wisdom and knowledge to you, and will help you prepare for interviews as you're going in. And so I was interviewing and I was reading, and I have to say, like all of these courses and books really helped me a lot in landing the roles that I'm in now. Another resource that I recommend, this is just some shameless self-promotion. I wrote a Medium post a couple of years ago called "Apply for Jobs Like a Privileged White Man in These 5 Easy Steps, Tips for Applying While Female or Anything Else." It is kind of tongue-in-cheek because you can you can apply for jobs any way that you like, but I'm definitely a person that like suffers from imposter syndrome, and I realized once I had gotten into tech that that a lot of the men in my life just didn't have the same sort of like fear about approaching things and applying for jobs and negotiating for higher salaries and things. And so this is kind of a tongue-in-cheek summary of a lot of job application just like wisdom that I learned. The joke is that every time I didn't know what to do, I went and called a privileged white man, and I got more money and was taken more seriously as a result. So anyway, I hope it's helpful and that you enjoy it. Some friends have told me that some of the advice was helpful, so I hope that it's helpful to you too. Anyway, now for the actual presentation about running remote design sprints. So this came from a project that I had this summer during the pandemic, but also I think even when we all go back to offices, there is still going to be a thumbprint of, there's going to be more remote culture and planning in our lives. And so understanding like the best tools that are at your disposal so that you can use them. I'll tell you a little bit of background about design sprints, whether or not you are familiar with the concept and like what they do and what they're for, and then I'll talk to you about the tools and the steps that I took in order to adapt it to remote work. So why do I have a picture of a waterfall? So once upon a time, and anyone who is old enough to, if you're old enough to have received software on a CD-ROM, then you'll know what I'm talking about. It used to be that software was delivered where the engineers and the designers were operating in a vacuum, and they would release software once a year. I grew up in the 90s, and my software was an Encyclopedia Britannica or like AOL, like delivered to me on a disk, like on a CD-ROM that I put in my computer. But users weren't really involved. And the reason why this is called a waterfall process is this is the old way of building software. It's because it kind of looks like a waterfall where the requirements for the software are designed and they're set out, they're designed, the engineers write the code, and then someone checks that it's working, but no one really talks to any users at all. And so from waterfall, now we kind of have agile, and agile is instead of going through this sequential planning process, now it's much more based on talking to people at every single point that you're building that software. So you are talking to people, you're doing user interviews before you build the software. You are doing user interviews while you build the software. You are doing user interviews at every single point. And the reason why this is important is because a design sprint is designed to get users to you and to the people who are building your software as quickly as possible to get that information so that you can connect with them and make sure that you're building something that's real. Even though the industry has kind of adopted agile methodology now as being more standard, I think that agile sometimes actually kind of still goes against human nature in a way. Because even though it is becoming more established best practices, like, of course you want to talk to people and talk to users, like, I think all of us like really kind of want to hide, like, if you're building the software, you kind of just want to like wait until it's perfect and keep building it and then launch it and it'll be this big impressive thing. But the secret is, in order to build great software, is like you have to reveal it and you have to make it live and show it to people, even when you feel like it's not ready yet. And so going from, oh, my ideas and my software is a special butterfly, and please, oh my, like, it'll be perfect when you see it, when I finish it, it's like breaking that and kind of going to this different feeling of knowing that something isn't ready, isn't done, isn't complete, is not perfect, but you still want to show it to people, because at every stage you're going to get valuable feedback that's going to save you a lot of time in the long term. So if you want to know about design sprints, thank you for coming to this talk, but also read this book. This is the book about design sprints. I'm sure a lot of you have already read it, but this is the standard. It takes you through how Google Ventures invented the method of a design sprint, and it talks about how important it is to get that feedback from people, especially in the early stages of a project. So I had read this. I had facilitated design sprints in the agency where I was working. And it takes you through a 5-step process, which traditionally takes 1 working week. And so, it takes you through these phases, which are all explained in detail in the book, going from mapping out the issues, sketching solutions, deciding on which solutions you want to test.
The brand for that matter.
Oh, sorry, was that, I'm so sorry, what was that comment? Can you say that again? Maybe that was a mistake. Okay. Can everyone hear me okay? Eva, is everything working all right?
Everything was good, yes.
Okay, great. All right. So it takes you through mapping out the problems, sketching different solutions, deciding what you want to do. Your prototyping, so you're building a prototype for people, and then you are testing that solution with real people, real users, and that is in the space of 5 days. Not a year, not multiple years, not multiple months. It is in the space of a week. And so it is built to be extremely, very rapid, so that you can get directly to getting feedback from users as quickly as possible. Now I should say, so I was hired to run a design sprint earlier this summer, post-pandemic. And so I was joining this company as a product manager. So I was in a new job, a new company, but everything remote. So, never met anyone in person, which is the way that we are joining companies now. It's really interesting time. And I was also hired to do a design sprint for a completely new product. And so we had a founder who was coming in. They had an idea to build a product for executives in the hospitality industry. And so it was my job to kick it off with a design sprint. And I said, great, no problem. I have run design sprints before. They said, cool, but you can run a 4-day remote design sprint. And I was like, oh yeah, wait, 4-day? Hold on a second, what? Wait, what are you talking about? And so they let me know that actually there's a new format. There's a 4-day design sprint, and also I had to adapt it in order to be remote. So I was like, okay, all right, let's talk about that. The team was the new founder and 3 engineers, and of course I had to, so I had two questions. Okay, 4 days, and then it's remote. So, okay, how am I going to do this? And also, I was also given about a week to prepare before we kicked off. So, so in terms of the question of a 4-day sprint, so there is an agency called AJ and Smart. They are based in Berlin, I believe, and they have taken the 5-day sprint and they have condensed it into a 4-day sprint. This is all that they do. That is their business, and so they took the different exercises that are involved in design sprints and they squished them together so that it is, they kind of like took the first 2 days and squished them together and then made it so that everything is wrapped up by the Thursday. And I was like, okay, well, I'm familiar with design sprints. I should be able to do that in 4 days. Luckily, they have a lot of resources that are available online. And so if you're interested in learning about design sprints, in addition to the book Sprint by Jake Knapp, AJ and Smart's YouTube channel is actually just a really wonderful resource. The 4-day sprint, they describe as Design Sprint 2.0. They have the sort of blessing of Jake Knapp, who signed off on it, and his name is like on the marketing of like, we designed Design Sprint 2.0 with Jake Knapp and this and that. But anyway, the YouTube videos that they have are extremely useful because they walk you through each part of it and also the new order of it, so that you understand the purpose of every exercise and also like the order that they're structured. So, so I was very lucky that they had already made all of these resources readily available, and also just to sort of like top up and remind myself exactly how each of those go. Now, I had a second problem. So like, okay, shorter design sprint, great, I can handle that. But wait a second, this design sprint is remote. Now, if you've done a design sprint that you know, the whole activity is, it's supposed to be people in one room writing on Post-its together and putting them up on a wall and having a shared space and perspective on everything. And so the idea that I was going to be leading this engagement with the founder in one city and the, and each of the engineers, everybody obviously like in their home, we may as well be like out in the middle of the desert. Like, how are we going to run a design sprint together? This doesn't make any sense. So, so I thought about it and I said, okay, well, the main purpose is that we need to have a shared perspective. So I'm going to go looking around for the tools that I can use in order to facilitate that. And we're very lucky the time that we live in, because I was very lucky. There are a lot of really incredible tools that are out there in the wild that are available that can help. So, so this is the list of tools that I used. And again, I'm sorry if I'm not going into so much depth about the design sprint itself and the exercises, because it is a 4 or 5 day thing. I think that that's better done by watching those videos with AJ and Smart or reading the book Sprint that will break all of that down for you. But this is how to run it, how to adapt it remotely. So tools. So I'll go through each of these 6 tools that were absolutely critical, and I wouldn't have been able to run that remote design sprint if it wasn't for these. So I'm just going to break down what each of these do. So first of all, so the book Sprint, it has a very handy section in the back of the book where it breaks down to the minute exactly which exercises should be taking place when. The first 2 or 3 days, you are going through many different exercises in order to come up with lots of ideas and then prioritize those ideas, and to come up with more ideas and to prioritize those ideas, and to give a small presentation and then decide which parts of things that you want to use for your product. And so so really just the actual facilitation of the schedule itself, just setting the agenda. I didn't want to have to sit down and plan minute by minute. I'm like, okay, if I'm already on the hook to run a 4-day sprint and I don't have this minute-to-minute agenda, maybe someone in the world has done this for me. So I started Googling 4-day design sprint agenda, and I discovered an amazing tool that's called Session Lab. And this is an app. It's a browser-based app that is that you can use. Basically, it is specifically designed to facilitate, and so it makes it really easy to start to plan. So I think you can see that it has the start of the times of every single exercise, as well as like the length of every single exercise. I realize that the word Session Lab isn't on the screen, but if you are running any workshop or anything, there is a free version of this, and I really encourage you to check it out because it has a lot of features that just makes it easy. Because you can set exactly what time you want something to start. If you're running late or there's an interruption, you can fill in the new time, and that's going to tell you exactly what time everything should start and everything should end. And so every single day, I knew exactly that I was on track. Oh, also, I should say, sorry, the most important thing about this is that Session Lab already had a template for a 4-day design sprint in their system. So I was so lucky that I found this, and someone had already put this agenda in here, not just on a list like pages of a book, but literally an interactive facilitated agenda. It was the luckiest find that prepared me for running this sprint. The second tool that I could not have done without is Miro. So Miro is a digital whiteboard app. And I was delighted to find that Miro also miraculously had a template for a 4-day design sprint already in their system. I'm going to show you towards the end of this the outcome because most of the design sprint took place on Miro. It became the shared space. It's a digital whiteboard, but it became the shared space of all of our brains of exactly the way that the product was going to work and what we were going to put in the prototype. And so I should also add that Miro is paid, and if you're going to have a team of people collaborating on this platform, it is like you just have to pay. I'm just telling you now that like you're going to have to buy the license. There's not a way to use it for free that's going to function for an entire week for everyone, but well worth the cost. Like absolutely critical. The third tool that was really important was Figma. Once you do the planning of the product in Miro, like Miro is a shared, it's a brainstorming space. It's a whiteboard. And so Figma is the place where the actual prototype gets built. And so when it is time to build the prototype, Figma is kind of the industry standard right now. It does the things that you want it to do. You can build you build a static, I guess the way to describe it, a prototype is not a working piece of software, it's a movie set, right? And so you're building a movie set of what your product looks like, and then you set up hotspots, and then you share that link with users in order to interview them, and they tap on it, and it feels like it's working because they are tapping on areas and it's taking them to a new screen. If you are interested in scaling up in any piece of software, I highly recommend getting to know Figma. They have plenty of free version, they have a free version that you can use. And there are a lot of tutorials online in order to learn about it. And so there are other programs like InVision that allow you to do prototyping. For my purposes, Figma did everything that I needed it to do. So I'm a big fan of Figma. When we were using it, we did use the paid version for the prototyping, but some of the prototyping features are free. So you should see which parts you need for your project. The fourth tool that I recommend and could not have done without is just Google Sheets. And the reason for that is you are going to be interviewing people at the beginning and the end of the sprint. And so it was really important that I just had a shared space. So in preparation for the sprint, I made this interview schedule. I set the specific times that we were going to be interviewing people. You can also see that on the Thursday, I was specifically scheduled in time in between each of the interviews. And I highly, highly recommend that. If you are running interviews, please give yourself a break in between, because a user interview is a performance and it takes a lot of energy. And so make sure that you give yourself breaks in between, so that you can be fully present for each of the interviews. Don't overschedule yourself if you don't have to. And then of course, Google Calendar. So I mean, we're all familiar with Google Calendar, but the reason why I say that this was really essential is that, so we were reaching out to people in order to interview them at the beginning of the week, because we wanted to get the context about their work and, you know, what type of software they might be looking for. And at the end of the week, I think it's really important to put interview invitations directly on people's calendars. So even if you email with them and you say, hi, can you join this Zoom at 2 p.m.? And they say, yes, love it, looking forward to it. I do not believe them unless I have sent them a calendar invite and they have received it and they have clicked yes. I always 100% put things on people's calendars, especially if you are building business software and people have busy schedules. If it is not in their calendar, it does not exist. And I know that more of us are living this way these days. I'm guilty of this as well. But just make sure that you put it directly in people's calendars. Otherwise they might not show. And even with that, factor in that it's really standard that at least 10% of participants will ghost on any user interview session. Even if you are giving them an incentive, like even if you're giving them $50 or whatever it is that's appropriate for that particular market, people just don't show up. They're busy, just life happens, and like your product and like your interview is like not the most important thing in their life. And so I would actually say, like, get in the habit of scheduling like 1 or 2 extra people above what you need to, about who you need to talk to, just so that you get the right number of people. Like, you want, if you're showing a prototype, like minimum of 4, maximum of 8, you're going to get most of the learnings that you want if you're selecting the right people. And as I said, make sure to space the interviews out. And then finally, and this is not surprising, but like the most important tool was Zoom. So having run user interviews in the before times in person, you know, we would invite people to come into our office, and then we would interview them face to face in a conference room, and then they would sit on a laptop and we would watch them, and we would watch them go through the prototype. Or another way might be like they might like bring it up on their phone, and maybe someone else has like on a Zoom call or something like that. We might have seen them, but the interaction and the interview was mostly happening in person. And to be honest, I didn't record most of the conversations that I had. We just kind of took notes, and so we had our own impressions afterwards. But running all the user interviews over Zoom, like out of necessity, because of the time that we're living in, was very interesting, because I recorded everything because it was really easy to record. And for the more complex user interviews, I would say, I mean, it was absolutely gold, because I was able to watch back those interviews, and it was kind of like, there were things that I certainly missed the first time, and it was kind of like interviewing them 2, 3, or 4 times because I had that there. And so, so Zoom made that really easy. And the way that we set it up was, I sent them the link, and we were testing a mobile app. And so I said, okay, can you please join Zoom on your phone? And so they did that. And then I sent them the link and they would tap on it. So they were sharing their screen on their phone. And so, so with that, we could see their interactions, and we were also recording what they were saying. And it made it really easy. I think like even going back to in-person interviews, I think I will use Zoom or something like Zoom. It was so easy to record the experience that I don't want to run user interviews without recording the experience from now on. I always ask people's permission and like let them know that I'm recording. Like I never record right from the minute that they join. It's like they join, I talk to them for a few minutes, make them feel comfortable, and then say, is it okay if I record this call? And they inevitably always say yes. So, okay, so the outcome, the outcome of the sprint, actually, I'm actually going to share instead, just a second. I'm gonna share my screen instead because I want to show you the result of the sprint in Miro. Eva, can you see this okay?
Looks good to me, yeah.
Okay, great. So, so this was the most magical thing, Miro, because it had this remote design sprint template that some wonderful, amazing human being in the world had already made before I was running this project. And so this already existed, and someone had laid out every single exercise of the remote design sprint on this board, and it was just here, ready and waiting for me to go ahead and adapt. And so using this template, so you can see that there are different exercises, there are instructions here in order to run it, and so all of the notes and like writing on Post-its and things like that, like people were writing on their own digital Post-its. And I made sure to set the stage with this, so you see people's names in the headings here. So exactly the people that were joining the design sprint, I made sure that there were that number of places, so that when it was time for people to start writing in their digital notes, no one was like, oh, where do I go? Where is my space? I wanted people to know exactly where they belong and to just hop in so that they could focus on the exercises. And so with this, you see, so you'll see some of these like digital stickies, a lot of design sprints, there are a lot of voting. There's a lot of voting involved in order to narrow things down. But this was just, it was just fantastic. It was where we drew the user map. It was where we ran our lightning demos, and it just made it really, really easy to focus everyone on the same screen at the same time. But you can also see how complex this is. Like if someone else had not designed this and found it, it would have been really, really difficult in order to pick up those pieces. And so if you are using a remote board, I really encourage you to take the time that's necessary in order to prepare your digital whiteboard with those exercises, so that people know where to find themselves, and in order to jump right in. And I wanted to show you, so this was the original template that I started with, so you can see that everything was empty. I actually just wanted to give you a little zoom through what the completed sprint looked like. And so as we were here, so, filling in so that everyone had their pictures, and you see a lot of the notes are disappeared because they ended up over here, and you can see the votes that we took on them. And so you go through these exercises, and like the results of the conversations are actually like kind of beautiful. It's kind of like some chaotic art. And so you're going to have a very full and very messy whiteboard if you have a great team. So these are their sketches that everyone did at home. They took pictures with their phones, sent it in, and then we discussed their different solutions. And so I was actually really surprised at how incredibly useful and powerful the digital whiteboard was. And also when it came time, not just to run the design sprint, but also like the planning of the product itself, we started to have conversations in this space, like the same way that we would have been whiteboarding. We ended up mapping out the product specifically for that. So, so at the end of it, we ran everything that we could, and it went fine. It kind of, regular design sprints are really exhausting because doing the research and coming up with ideas and narrowing those ideas down, and prototyping and running user interviews, it's a lot of work. It's really exhausting. And so even in person, it can be really challenging, and you just want to like bring all of your energy and focus, get a good night's sleep, all of that. I should say that I was under pressure in that particular situation because the client had been told that it was going to be a 4-day design sprint no matter what. It is also possible, because we are all remote, to not do it that way. If you want, you can stretch those phases out. If you want to take a design sprint, there's nothing that says you have to do it in 4 days or you have to do it in 5 days. And I would say with remote, if I had had the choice, I maybe would have taken 2 weeks to do it and actually given people more time so that they could have more individual thinking time and just a chance to log off. It was a lot of time online. I made sure to structure in a lot of breaks so that people could eat and relax and step away from their screens. So there were other considerations just for people's comfort as we were going through this. And that's it. So that is my story of the remote design sprint. And that's me.
Sounds great. This was very informative. I just want to let you know that I did read your apply for jobs like a privileged white man article, and it's extremely helpful. I applied some of the points on there to my uses, and they work, and it's true, and I cannot recommend it more than that. But besides the point, moving on to the questions, there are some questions here, and one that I like a lot was, what did you mean by interviewing people before and after? How are those interviews different?
Oh, you mean in the before times versus pandemic times?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. So do you want to hear about the process of selecting, or the actual, like, the moment of interviewing, or maybe like a mix of both?
I guess both.
Yeah. I mean, the pandemic is really it has impacted our work in a lot of like different like unexpected ways. Like in some ways it's a huge disadvantage because we're you're not you don't see people face to face. It's hard to bond with people. We live in a world where you have to ask permission for people's time more and more, and so there's a little bit of space. At the same time, there's also kind of like a level playing field because everyone's at home and everyone's online. And so I think that people who were remote workers before have experienced, like, everyone is a little bit more on the same level. And so I think in some ways it's been good, and in other ways it's been bad. So I would say, first of all, for interviewing people, people are a little bit more available, and because they're not commuting. And so people have a little bit more time, or, depending on their job and who you're trying to interview. In the past, it's always been, best practice to interview people in person, or even to go on site, like go to their office, go to their environment, go find out what their lives are like. There's stories of the company Intuit, who built was a Mint and TurboTax. Like, they would go to people's homes when they were like doing their own taxes every year, because they wanted to see, like, what does your life look like when you are using the software. That is really, really important to us. And so that is still best practice. The more context, the more understanding, the more empathy that you can build with people, like, go and do that. But if it is impossible to talk with people, it's a little bit it's more acceptable now to interview people over Zoom. And so in this particular case, for this product, it was a business product. And so we were looking for people who, the founder I was working with was already in touch with people in his industry. And so he was calling on contacts that he already had. And so we weren't interviewing, we weren't like putting ads on Craigslist or like trying to source, we weren't trying to source strangers. We were actually just like talking to the people that directly that he was hoping to serve. there are a lot of great methods about finding the right people to interview. So I encourage you to read more about that. There are techniques like screening surveys to make sure that you are interviewing the appropriate market. In my case, it was just a matter of reaching out to people who were relevant, which I guess was pretty lucky for me.
Nice.
Yeah. And then the steps of actually like interviewing them, as I said, get consent from them first, like have a friendly email intro, and, get confirmation like, hi, we're doing this research at this time. Are you interested? Can you make it? That's great. And then once they say yes, I go ahead and put something on their calendar, and then I hop back in the thread and I say, hi, I just put this under your calendar. Here is the Zoom link. Just assuming that people will lose Zoom links, will, just like, I just assume that whoever I'm talking to is at like inbox 2000 or something like that. So like always, like always making sure that, that everybody has immediately what they need. I don't trust anyone to, no, trust is not the right word. I don't want to make that extra work for anybody else when I have the link and I know where to find it. I take that responsibility on myself to make sure that they have it available at the right time. So the Zoom link is in the calendar invite and also in their inbox. And then the morning of or the afternoon before, send them another message with like, hi, here is the link, and, looking forward to seeing you. So
I got you. So basically be prepared, make sure everybody knows everything. And I guess the question was more geared to like all the interviews you do before the sprint and after the sprint, are there difference between that?
Yeah, so that's really interesting because the 5-day sprint, the original 1.0 sprint, makes a lot of time on the Monday to do a lot of interviews. I think it times it so that you're interviewing people for 2, 3, or 4 hours. Mm-hmm. The 4.0 has less time for that, and it considers shorter interviews with experts. The 2.0 design sprint was specifically designed to be more conscious of like executives' time. One of the major complaints with the original design sprint was that it's really hard to have decision makers to clear 5 days of their calendar is like almost impossible. And so so it's designed to take less of their time. So that means that there's shorter interviews on the Monday. So it says like 15 to 20 minute interviews in the morning. And then it starts mapping out the problem space for the users right away, which is really interesting. And, AJ and Sprint, all that they do is run design sprints. That is their entire business. And they basically said that they iterated with the structure, and they decided that at the end of the day, having really, really long interviews at the very first day, the outcome was not necessarily better. And so they made it shorter, and then it's the final day of the design sprint still has like many like longer interviews. So if you can get people for 30 minutes to an hour, do that. If you can get them for less time, that's great. More feedback is always the best.
Nice. And one more question. Who is on your team? Are there any UXers, any, developers? Who is on your team, basically?
So I would say that, so I believe in like the holy trinity of product design and engineering. And so I would always sort of like request to have those three professionals in the room. For this case, I was assigned, it was myself, the product manager, and 3 engineers. And they were all extremely helpful, but we didn't have a designer. And so that was, so I am a very novice designer. And so I would say that was actually, like I had practice with Figma previous to that. And so we were able to scrape by, and we were able to make the prototype that we needed to make. And it all turned out fine. But I would say that having someone who is comfortable, or at least familiar with the wireframing and prototyping tools that you are using is really critical. So we did not have a designer, but I like having a designer if you can have one.
who's doing the interviews then? How are you facilitating those?
Sure. So I joined that specific project because I had experience with running design sprints, and so I was responsible for the agenda and keeping time, facilitation, the tooling, explaining each of the exercises and running people through them, checking in, making sure that people were present and comfortable, and that the timing was good, and had help building the prototype with the other people who were on the team. So the founder, someone else from the client's company, and the three engineers worked on that together. And I was also aware that we were going to need to have those user interviews. So the founder was reaching out to users the week before the sprint to say, hi, are you able to come and do some user interviews in any of these specific time slots?
Nice, being prepared. That's the way to go.
Yeah, but I should say, like, the job of a design sprint facilitator is tough, and you really have to be present. You need to keep time. You need to be aware. But it's actually good for someone to be carrying that, so that everyone else can just clear their heads and think about the product.
Yeah, gotcha. A couple more questions. So basically, prep time. How did you end up choosing those exact, applications? And did you have any like time to like prepare, learn the all that?
Mm-hmm. So I had about a week. They brought, yeah, it was a short amount of time. I would say that ideally it's really nice to have a week just to do like background research. The week that I had to prepare, I had one client meeting, I met the founder like one time before the sprint happened, and just like for an hour, just to get an idea of like, just to start to think about what the problem space might look like. And to set their expectations of, and I also I cleared their calendars. I made events for them on their calendars from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and made very, very clear, like, this whole day is going to be devoted to these activities. And so really clear your calendar, really actually clear your calendar for this. And so, yeah, logistically, I spent that week doing like a little bit of industry research. I would have liked to do more and have more context at the start, but it's fine. It happened as it did. And spent that time looking for and thinking about my strategy of what are the logistics of this? Like, what tools am I going to use in order to make this happen?
Did the team had any say in your choosing the applications, or did you consult them with anything like that, or it was like, learn this, guys, come on?
Yeah, I would say that of all the tools I showed you, Figma definitely has the steepest learning curve. And so I did encourage everyone to do some Figma tutorials beforehand, because I knew that it was going to be all hands on deck because we didn't have a designer. And so some people did tutorials and some people showed up on the Thursday and started to do the tutorials then. I'm glad that they did. I'm glad that they did. I'm glad that they spent the first hour really digging in and learn, instead of just fumbling around and not knowing how it works. I was responsible for choosing that tool set, and I did it, and that's what we used. Everything that the minimum functionality of what we needed to do in order to get it done.
Great. So I guess one more question. Did you, for this new project, new everything, did you consult a mentor? Did you have anybody that you can go to and ask questions and freak out whenever you needed to?
Yeah, for sure. I have my friends that I freaked out to.
Yeah, support really important.
My partner takes a lot of that on. But also just I it was just a situation where I knew I was going to be under a lot of pressure for a short amount of time. And I'm the type of personality that like, I kind of find that to be fun. And so I was like, I need to clear my calendar. I need to move mountains to make this happen, because it was happening so quickly. And like, yeah, like it was stressful for me to like put all of those pieces together. But, and I did do a little bit of work on the weekend before the sprint, making sure that the Miro template was set. It was just really small things, like the template comes with places for 4 people to share their thoughts, and there were 7 people, and so I added more, you know, like I made sure that everybody had their spot in order to contribute. And so it was just sort of like going through the exercises and making sure that the whiteboard was what it needed to be beforehand. Yeah, but it was all on me.
So from all the resources you listed, is there anything that you absolutely love and you're going to use over and over and over?
Yeah, I mean, like I recommend all of those tools. Like I think they're great. The Session Lab, like since I used it to run that design sprint, I use it for like baking bread, because you have to because you know that you have to like you have to like knead it at these certain times, then you have to let it rest. And so like I just treat the kneading like for 15 minutes as an exercise, and then copy another exercise and just do that. And so I know what time throughout the day, and I can move something in, and if I'm late, then I just adjust the time.
Wow, so you started using it for like personal stuff too.
Yeah. It's just like it's like actually just a really great facilitation tool. It was just a surprising little gem.
Great. So you never know what you're gonna learn doing this design sprint. So in that in mind, do you think that there's any disadvantage of design sprints?
Yes. I think that I said this before. Mm-hmm. All that a design sprint is a really condensed design and prototyping process. Mm-hmm. So like the essential parts of a design sprint are spending time understanding the context and the problems, and, you know, just getting a sense of like, who are you building for and why?
Yeah.
Then coming up with lots of ideas. So, we could do this for them. How might we do this? How might we solve this problem? How might we solve this problem? So you have a brainstorming session where there's no judgment and like no limits. Just make as many ideas as you can. The next phase is you just narrow it down. And so a lot of the exercises are consolidating those ideas, condensing them, saying, okay, well, this person had this great idea, this person had this great idea. So how do you organize that without people fighting?
That's a big one.
And I really mean that, because getting people to decide is one of the hardest things for any human to do. So what a design sprint is really good at is the dot voting processes is kind of a magic thing, because it goes through the process where everyone puts all of their ideas up, and then everyone is given a certain number of stickers. You only get 3 stickers this time. So which 3 ideas do you like? Everybody puts their stickers up. This one got the next this one got the most stickers. And in the room, you always have a decider. You have one person who just is the boss. It is not a democracy. Design sprints are not a democracy. Democracies are fair, but they're not fast. And the whole point of a design sprint is to keep things moving. So it's like, this one got the most stickers. Decider, are you cool with that? You want to do that, or you want to do this one? Great. No argument. Move on to the next thing. We're doing that one, right?
Great.
And so it is amazing at getting people to get their ideas out and to just move forward. And that's really critical. And so the advantage is that it helps you move fast. I would say that the disadvantage is that you can do things more slowly and in more depth. And, you know, like you could, instead of 5 days or 4 days, you could spend 4 or 5 weeks. You could interview people for an entire week, and you could map out solutions for an entire week. Like, it used to be the software was built really, really slowly. Even with Agile, you can do Agile really slow if you want. And so I think that design sprints, like the disadvantages are one, that it's exhausting and everyone is like already exhausted because of the pandemic and everything that goes along with that. It's exhausting, it's fast, it really like, it creates pressure that for some people creates creativity and for other people just like is like not worth the stress. And so you can do a design sprint and you can just slow it down. You could do one of those exercise, you know, if you are on a product team and you are trying to get to a new solution and like try new iterations, like, and you feel like a 4 or a 5 day is like too much, stretch it out, do it over 2 weeks, do it over 3 weeks, or just take some of the best bits of it and do it in a couple of days. Like, it's a great structure and it's a really great framework to start to do things. And just to reiterate, it's like understanding, coming up with lots of solutions, prioritizing, prototyping, and then showing that to real people. If you prototype and you don't show it to anyone, it doesn't count.
Obviously, yeah. Don't keep it under your bed. But, okay, this is our time for today. Don't forget to join us for our next event happening tomorrow. Tomorrow we're gonna have a study circle group who will help you prepare for a product interview. For more events, connect with Products by Women, LinkedIn, Instagram, join our Slack channels. Thank you, Sarah, so much. This was amazing. Also, yes, before I forget, we're gonna have our first annual Product by Women Awards. So go to the website, enter, vote, look at what's going on. And yeah, the deadline is November 15th. So thank you, Sarah, for everything. This was very insightful and awesome. And thank you guys for being here. And I guess goodbye.
Thank you, Iva.
Bye-bye.
Bye.